Welcome to Canada's podcast. So, Maciej, welcome to Canada's podcast. Nice to meet you. And I think, as I normally do, what I want you to do is sort of tell everyone who you are, what you do, and where you are in your journey today. Okay, you've got an interesting story, so I think just give us a 5-minute overview.
Sure. Yeah, no, and it's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Maciej Jastrzębski. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Li-Metal. My background is a technical background. I'm a mechanical engineer by training, and I often say by temperament as well. So I started my career with Hatch, which is a large Canadian engineering firm, sort of right from the nuts and bolts, designing pieces of equipment, eventually larger projects, mostly in the metallurgical space. And then eventually within Hatch, I founded a group to develop new technologies, new products, also primarily related to the metal space, but expanding a little bit beyond that as well. And I think that's really what, I didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur until I started doing that. But that continued for a number of years, and we had quite a few successes, which was great. And that got me really interested in the idea of founding a business. From there, I moved. I realized I needed to develop my business skills. So I moved to Barrick Gold. I was brought in to help commercialize some technologies that they had developed in-house. I helped run their development facility in Vancouver. Around, I guess it was about 4 years ago now, I reconnected with an old friend of mine from Hatch, who we had left about a year apart. I was really quite on fire about the idea of doing an entrepreneurial venture. And he had been quite a successful entrepreneur. He had started, amongst other things, Li-Cycle, which is one of the largest North American lithium-ion battery recycling companies. And so we started to look for a problem we could help tackle together. And one of the insights that Tim had was that there was huge disconnect. There was obviously successor technologies to lithium-ion batteries were starting to become mature enough that they would be commercialized soon. And there was also, and most of them relied on lithium metal in some form as a higher anode material. But then if you looked at what was going on the supply chain side, and particularly in the lithium metal production side, we had sort of outdated technology, very small production. And we immediately saw that, if these batteries are going to take off, we're going to need to scale up production of these materials. And nobody's really looking at this in a serious way. So that's where we got our entry point. And that's something, sort of a cliched start, but we really, I had just, my first son had just been born, and it was about the same time that this idea came into existence. And so I was sort of spending my waking hours splitting my attention between those two newborns, if you will. And so we raised some money initially to help fund better scale type development work and so forth. But very quickly we realized, one, that the technology we were developing had legs, and two, that it wasn't the full solution. Because when we started talking to the battery developers, they said, "This is great. We're glad somebody's working on this lithium supply problem. It's something we see as a major obstacle, but the bigger obstacle is actually in the anode materials." And so we started very quickly looking at those anode materials. We started, both Tim and I have strong technical backgrounds, so we started looking at what are some ways in which you could, in a cost-effective way, produce the anode materials, really transform the lithium metal into those anode materials. And pretty quickly, we came to what we thought was a viable solution, started testing it, started sending sample material around. And that was where we really got on the roller coaster. And that it's been about, I guess if we take it from that point, 2.5 or 3 years from that point, we're now a publicly listed company. We've raised about $30-40 million all told. we're, I think, well on our way to commercializing those technologies. So it's been a bit of a.
You're talking like, I just raised $40 million, done this and that, but for people that are listening, that's a lot of money to raise. Okay. What made it possible? I mean, in terms of, obviously you guys felt, I had a great engineering kind of innovation and the patents and everything else. But what made people buy in, if you like? Because that's, I think, everyone has great ideas, whether it be engineering, whether it be commercial, whether it be this, whether it be that. But everyone doesn't get to raise, 40 million. So what made your thing, how did you get to that point? Was it your process? Was it, give us some
Sure.
thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I glossed over a lot of things there, right? As necessarily one does. But I think there were a few things in our favor. One was Tim's immense credibility. He had done so much work in the lithium space. He had started two companies. He was in the process of scaling up a very promising company. So there was already a network of individuals interested in the space who wanted to invest in another venture that was kind of built on a similar model. So I think that was I'm not being modest when I say that that momentum, that impetus was created by Tim. I mean, I'm the technical founder, and even though we're both quite technical people, I'm the technical founder. So I drove the development. I drove a lot of that. But especially in the early days, Tim was absolutely instrumental. So I think that the lesson there is, it takes more than one to put together all the set of skills and the expertise to get something off the ground.
How did you manage to get, to generate that level of confidence? Was it your presentation? Was it the technology? I mean, how did you manage to do that? I mean, you still got to go and pitch and,
Sure.
and convince. Was there some kind of process that worked that you can talk about?
I don't think we had any magic formula. I think what we had is a good sense for what would build credibility. What at each stage, what we needed to have done in order for people to buy into the viability of what we were doing. I think another thing is, this was also at a time when the appetite for this space was very high. I mean, it continues to be high. It continues to be a massive growth area. But I think we were starting to see, in a way, a little bit of turnover of interest in that people were starting to look a bit further and further down the road besides just mining lithium and so forth. So I think we were fortunate, and our investors have been fantastic, especially everywhere along the range, but especially early on. You had to really have the vision to see, okay, this is what's going to be needed in 5+ years' time. This is the kind of technology that needs to come into existence. So I think a lot of credit goes into Tim's efforts, to knowing who would be interested in this type of story, the foresight exhibited by the investors themselves, and of course the technical work that was done in support of that, and validating step by step, validating aspects of the technology. It's it all has to come together, and I would be lying if I said that we had it all figured out from the start and we just executed on a carefully laid out plan. I mean, that's not how it happens. But I think being able to draw on that experience and do the work and present the work in an appropriate way, I think was definitely part of it.
You and Tim both had great careers. What I mean, you can't. I mean, entrepreneurs are kind of weird. I think what made you step out of that safety zone. Because you're still stepping into something unproven. What What was the thinking behind that? Was it achievement? Was it wealth? Was it both? Whatever.
For me, it's always been, like I said, I'm very technology oriented, so I love a good problem. And as a technology oriented person, as an engineer, an industry doesn't come into existence every day, right? And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a massive industry come into existence and transform before our eyes. And if you're an engineer and you're not excited by that, there's probably something wrong with you. So I think that was a big part of it. I think, like I said, I love a good problem, and there's certain limitations within the framework of a large company that you just don't get the same breadth of activity that you get from working on an entrepreneurial venture. You don't get to go after the same type of problem. I mean, this is admittedly, it's you're hitting a moving target. You're not tapping into a market that already exists and trying to get 2 or 3% market share. You're actually trying to help bring that market into existence by the technologies that you're developing. And so I think that's just fundamentally an interest. It's an exciting problem that pulls you.
So let's sort of move away from the pure business side of it, which is really interesting, and certainly advise people to go look at your company, and you've got some very innovative technology there. I always like to kind of cover mentorship. Okay, I don't know about you, but from my perspective, I've had a couple of mentors, and I carry their advice even now with me. Is there any kind of advice that the mentor can kind of direction that you could share with us that sort of been and continue to be kind of instrumental in your progression?
Yeah, I can, and in some ways it's an amalgam, or different ways, different things to said different ways, but basically that's sort of two elements. One is distilled to the finest, or the essence. It's keep going. Whenever you're dealing with new technology, or whenever you're dealing with a new venture, it's like you're never working with the best possible information. Every next step gives you additional information that helps you improve your decision making. Mm-hmm. And so one element of that is basically like keep going, understand that whatever challenges you happen to come across today, or opportunities you come across today, you will have additional better information about them as you make progress. And I think that's really stuck with me. And an important element of that, which is really the second piece of advice, but it's instrumental in allowing you to operationalize that, is it's something actually my co-founder said to me relatively early on, which is that you got to hold these things gently. And what that is really an appeal to approaching the thing with an egoless type of approach. As an entrepreneur, you have so much tied up in the venture, especially at the early stage. It's an embodiment of your vision or what have you. And but in order to see it clearly and to be able to keep going, is you have to kind of hold it with a certain kind of egolessness and with a certain distance, and look at the developments that happen every day and say, okay, what does this mean? How do I put this into practice? How do I use this to improve either the technology, or how we're running the business, or how we're approaching customers, whatever it is. And I think those two are a really powerful combination for anybody who's trying to do something new.
Excuse me. What do you know? What's the best thing you found about being an entrepreneur?
I mean, there's a ton of great things, but I think for me, it's having the freedom to choose the vision, especially again at the beginning. You can really decide which problem and what breadth you want to tackle, and then seeing that evolve over time through the different stages. You know, as the company grows, as more people come in, and as a founder, as an entrepreneur, you have this really intimate perspective on it because you've really kind of been there along all of those steps and through all the trials, and you understand the origin in a very intimate way. And just I think seeing that evolution is tremendously interesting, and I think just amazing fodder for learning.
So, you know, you obviously enjoy what you're doing. You know, what don't you like to do?
What don't I like to do? Well, I have a pretty simple. It's a bit of a circular definition, but there's things that I involuntarily stay up, you know, till 3 a.m. working on, and those are the things that pull me along.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that are relatively neutral, and then there's those things which I have to put on a to-do list and force myself to do. And so, you know, that category of things is more, you know, of the administrative nature. It's more of, you know, it's if I'm not telling the story, if I'm not working on a difficult problem, if I'm not working with the team, if it's an activity that isn't, you know, in a visceral way related to solving the business challenges that are in front of us, those are the things that I have to force myself to do. And I mean, everybody has those in every professional capacity. But you know, it's if you're a founder, you're fundamentally a creative. You're likely a creative person,
Yeah.
and so you like the tasks that are more creative. I think that's normal.
A bit more fun. You a morning or a night person? I ask everyone that.
I think I probably hinted at that, but definitely night person. Definitely, some of my best work is done sort of, you know, twiddling away on my phone in bed, trying to not wake up my wife as I'm, you know, just trying to crack something. So it's like I said, those are the moments when I know I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing because I'm forgoing sleep for them. So it's definitely a night person.
Well, what books are you reading, if you have any time? I mean, or are they all engineering books? I mean, you know.
No, they're not all engineering books. I mean, I used to be a huge reader. Less so now. You know, young family and young company tend to eat up a lot of time. So I find I do most of my reading as audiobooks now. I do occasionally pick up a paper physical book, but most of it is listening, which is a bit of a different experience. The one I'm listening to right now is The Machiavellians by James Burnham, which is a political treatise.
Yeah. It's interesting. What's most exciting for you in your business? I mean, you know, you're in that kind of, you know, really at the forefront of change from sort of, although your background is really in resources or whatever, you're really kind of changing the way we're going to use, you know, batteries and electricity and things like that. I mean, what's most exciting about that space? You live, you know, eat, whatever, you know, every minute of the day, every second of the day. What can you pass on that might be useful for us guys that are, you know, looking at it and thinking about it?
I think for me, you know, there's there's two aspects. One is really pushing what the company is doing, really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with these materials. We're really working to enable cheaper, cleaner, better batteries. But besides that focus on the mission, I think what's really exciting is batteries are a platform. They're something. They're like oil was 100 years ago. There's something. They're a form of energy storage that makes things possible that weren't possible before. So I think one of the most exciting things for me is the applications that will be enabled by better batteries are things we either imagine sort of in rough outline today or don't imagine yet because the capability is just not quite there yet and not en masse. So I think things like electric air travel, I think things like more advanced robotics that are enabled by higher energy storage, wider adoption of electric vehicles, like all of those things will be transformational to the economy and to our everyday lived experience. So I think to me that's what's really exciting about this space. It's yes, from an economic point of view, it's a massive industry. It's an opportunity for countries like Canada to leverage their existing capabilities and become even bigger participant in the world economy, and all of that is great. But from a let's say technical nerd perspective, I think what's really exciting is all the things that will build on top of that, all of the technologies that will be enabled by these by next generation batteries, and in turn by the materials that we're trying to produce. So that's if you want to be excited about getting up in the morning, if you're faced with that prospect, it's pretty easy.
So one more question really, and then we're kind of reaching our end. If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, well, maybe two words, what would it be? What would they be?
They'll seem contradictory, but I'll say practical and contrary.
Okay, all right. Mitch, it's been great meeting you. And how can people get a hold of you? We get a lot of people listen, and some of them want to connect, basically. So.
Sure. Yeah. So LinkedIn is the best approach. There's not a lot of people with my name involved in the lithium industry, so I'm easy to find.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for coming on the Cannabis Podcast, and it's been great meeting you.
Likewise. Thank you, Philip. It's been a pleasure.